A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Most High directeth his steps. Proverbs 16 and 19. Yeah.
I only know one way to spend this time, to spend this time, only one way.
I only know one way, baby.
To live this, reaching my destination. One way to spend this time.
They gon' feel me on this one.
To spend this time, only one way.
Prophet.
To live this life, to live this,
Listen.
reaching my destination.
You only get one life, better live it to the fullest. Sometimes you pull the trigger, sometimes you bite the bullet.
Shabbat Shalom, family. It's your boy Solemn Prophet here with Professor S and company. And this is Shabbat Talk. Professor S, go ahead and say what's up to the people.
All right, well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Shabbat Talk. We got a good study that Solemn Prophet put together today. So we're going to go through this and see what gems he's pulled out of the scripture for us.
Literally last night, the Most High put it on my mind and on my heart. And I was like, all right, I'll do it tomorrow if I could remember it. I said, if I remember it, it'll be worth it. And so I did. When I woke up, that was the first thing that was on my mind. So I was like, all right. So I put it together today. Nothing crazy new. Some of the stuff we've mentioned on this platform before. We always say this and people still wait to the end to ask questions. Please stop me. Please, listen, do me a favor. Please stop me and ask questions or bring up something, because I don't want to just be reading this document. This is 6 pages. I don't want to just be reading this whole thing. You know, let's have some dialogue and make it more, you know what I mean? But this is some good information though. So the thought came to my mind of, you know, when questioning the Father, right? About questioning the Father. And that's where you get the title from. When questioning the Father goes wrong. Now the goes wrong part, I know when you read it, you're probably thinking about there's some type of consequence, but the consequence isn't like what I'm saying, like something bad is going to happen to you if you question the Father. But the consequence is actually the conviction you receive once you receive the understanding of why it wasn't smart or wise to question the Father. Because you can question him because you want to know, right? You want to get knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. But then there's a different type of questioning when you're like second guessing and undermining him, right? And that's the questioning that we're really focusing on tonight. So like I said, stop me at any given time. You don't gotta wait for me to get to a certain point or finish this thing. Please jump on in, get into the conversation. So it says there may be a time in our lives where we question the Most High. It may be questioning his motives from reading the scriptures, or it may be something in our own personal situations where we may feel like our circumstances are unfair. There may also be times where we feel an instruction or command given by the Most High doesn't make any sense. We have all been there. So today I want to dive into a few scenarios where it may appear that the Father is either being unfair, cruel, or instructing us to do pointless or meaningless tasks. Here's a simple example. Let's take a look at Leviticus 11. So we're jumping right in, okay? So Leviticus 11, I didn't want to put the whole chapter because I was trying to make sure this wasn't too long. It still ended up being 6 pages, but it could have been a lot longer. So Leviticus 11, 2 and 3, and then 7 and 9. So speaking to the children of Israel, saying, these are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth, and whatsoever parteth the hoof and is cloven-footed and cheweth the cud among the beasts that shall ye eat. So we can only eat of the beasts, the ones that parteth the hoof and they chew the cud, or they're eating grass and vegetation. They're not carnivores, right? And then it says, scrolling down, this is verse 7, because it goes through a list of various things that you can't eat. One of the things is camel, bro. And I found it. It said even though if it's part of the hoof, it cheweth not the cud.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Camel is actually part of the reason for that. And you might get into the scientific reasons why these things are not good, not healthy to eat. So maybe I should save that.
Well, you could
But
definitely chime in. But yeah,
okay, well,
I
the
thought we
camel.
was asking about the camel before.
No, it wasn't whether you can eat camel. Obviously, you can't eat camel; they're unclean. Um,
What was it about?
but it was drink camel milk
Oh,
because it said Jacob had milking camels.
oh, got you.
So
Okay.
the product, so the question that came up was a bee is unclean. You can't eat a bee, but you can eat honey. Honey is clean, but the bee itself is not clean. So the question was, if even though a camel is unclean, would its milk be clean? So
Good
anyways,
question. Okay. So when I saw in Leviticus 11, it said camel, it sparked my memory, but I couldn't remember exactly what we was discussing. So
yeah.
I
Now,
appreciate you.
camel is unclean because um, basically what the camel does is it consumes a lot of water, but what happens is it becomes urine, and basically instead of, like, most animals would piss out their urine, right? But a camel doesn't. A camel just cycles it through their body to rehydrate themselves, so their meat is basically soaked in urine.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
that's why they stink so bad.
Probably, yeah, and they do.
Well,
You know?
hold on to that same exact thought, because that's what we're getting to.
Mhm.
Not exactly specifically about the camel, but that is good information. So it says, and the swine, though he divideth the hoof and be cloven footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. Of their flesh shall ye not eat, and their carcasses shall ye not touch, they are unclean to you. These shall ye eat of all that are in the waters, whatsoever hath fins and scales in the waters, in the seas and in the rivers, them shall ye eat. So if you're trying to eat a fish, they got to have fins and they got to have scales. Those are the qualifying factors.
Oh yeah, so no jellyfish, no octopus, no slimy sea creatures or
No
shellfish.
shrimp, no shellfish, no crab, none of that. So I said, read the whole chapter to see a full breakdown of what foods are clean and unclean. But one may ask, or one might say, why is it that we cannot eat pig or shrimp or catfish? It sounds pointless, like rules to follow that seem to just be a burden, right? Well, in fact, there are plenty of reasons why refraining from eating unclean animals is important. Professor S just mentioned one when it came to the camel. Maybe camel is a delicacy in some countries, right? And for them, why I can't eat a camel? I like camel. It tastes good, or whatever. But then you actually get a breakdown and understanding of what is going on with it and why the Most High told us we couldn't eat it. So you got physical health, it being toxic to our body. If you eat meat, like he said with the camel, if you're eating meat that's constantly just basically soaked in urine over and over and over again, that's toxic. That meat is not going to be good to you, right?
Nope.
Spiritual health. There's a spiritual aspect to this as well. It taints the spirit. We're supposed to keep our bodies as a temple, right? Clean and acceptable, holy unto the Most High. And the things that we put into our bodies also have ramifications spiritually. Scientific reasons, like he mentioned, it puts our body in an acidic state. Our bodies are supposed to remain in a state of alkalinity, meaning the pH balance in our bodies is supposed to be higher than 7. It's supposed to be, I'd say on the low end, at least an 8, but higher than that. Because when you have your body in a state of alkalinity, your body is able to fight off all kinds of disease, right? So when you do that, the cancers, the heart disease, all of the various flus and stuff, right? All of that stuff can't live in a clean and basic environment. But if it's in an acidic environment, that's where they grow, that's where they reproduce. And that's why you get so much. That's why the black diet, so many of our people suffering from all kinds of illnesses because the foods that we was raised to eat are not good for us. They're mostly all acidic, or they're not acidic, but the way that we prepare them based on the recipes handed down over generations makes them acidic. So we're just consuming our whole lives eating all of this food that's just messing us up, and we don't even know it. And then we get high blood pressure and arthritis and cancer and lung disease and all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And it lowers our vibrational frequency. We have a natural vibrational frequency that we're supposed to maintain. And eating certain things or wearing certain things can disrupt that natural vibrational frequency. We'll talk more about the vibrational frequency in one of the other examples that I'll do. And then blatantly obedience, because he says so. Like, why are we trying to, like you said earlier offline, Professor S, some people just blatantly try to find ways to avoid having to do what they're told. Whatever the Most High says in his word, they want to look for ways around it. They don't want to do it. They want to, but what about this? But what about that? You know, and so all of these things points to one thing. It's for our good. He's trying to help us. He's trying to protect us. We might not know what's in these various animals that he claimed as unclean, but at the end of the day, if we're obedient, we don't need to know, because we're going to be saved from dealing with the repercussions of that, because we're just simply being number 5, obedient.
Yeah, see, he's not telling you, oh, don't eat the shrimp because I don't want you to enjoy the delicious taste, right? He's not saying, oh, I don't want you to enjoy the catfish, right? He's saying, no, this stuff is unhealthy for you, and I want you to be well. I want you to be healthy, you know? It's like, to elaborate on the fins and scales thing, right? Years back, the Navy did a study because the study was primarily for people who were like, a ship went down and they're on a life raft and they haven't eaten for a while and all they have is fish, right? And it was basically under the condition that they couldn't cook it, what would be the most healthy fish to consume and what would make them sick if they ate it. And the Navy spent like $2 million conducting the study to find that if the fish had fins and scales, they could be eaten. But if they didn't have both fins and scales, then they would make you sick. And there's lots of factors involved in that, but scales actually prevent toxins that are in the water from absorbing into the fish. So like with the catfish, for example, not only is its diet just disgusting, but yeah, as a bottom feeder, but not only is its diet disgusting, but the catfish, it doesn't have scales, and so it will actually absorb any toxins that are in the water, whereas a trout would not absorb the toxins that are in the water through their skin, because they have scales that prevent that. Various other examples of that, with the camel, like I had said, you know, the meat's basically soaked in urine, right? Similarly with sharks are also the same way. Their meat has a very high urine content. And we know sharks don't have scales, so they're unclean, right? Salmon, on the other hand, they are clean. They have fins and scales. So, you know, whether you're looking at these bottom feeders in the ocean, like the shrimp or lobster, which are basically just big underwater cockroaches, pretty much what they are. And their diets are totally nasty. I mean, they eat whale carcasses and fish poop and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they just go across the bottom of the ocean. They're like garbage disposals. Pigs as well. They're basically like 4-legged garbage disposals. Yeah. They eat virtually anything, including other pigs. They're just they'll eat their own feces. It doesn't matter. Anything they come across, they'll eat it, right? And they were made this way to clean up, right? Like a vulture. Not too many people would drive by a vulture picking at some roadkill and say, I want to eat that, you know? I mean, You don't look at a vulture like that. Why would you look at a pig like that? Because a pig's going to do the same thing. It's going to see this roadkill and eat it. You know.
As my sis is over here just smashing whatever food she eating. You're gonna ruin her appetite.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to see that.
You the way you look down at the plate, like you look like you was in love, like.
I was like, yeah, it don't have or it got split hubs in there. It's true to cut.
Now, another thing with chewing the cud, though, just to get a little bit more into the science of it, when an animal chews the cud, it actually extracts all of the nutrients out of what they've consumed, right? So a sheep or a goat or a cow, right? They have multiple stomachs and they constantly are chewing on stuff. They're constantly regurgitating food, chewing on it more, and swallowing it back to a different stomach to process it further, right? They actually absorb a ton more of the nutrients out of the food because of doing that. They don't just eat it down and then that's it. They eat it and then they chew on it more, which releases more of the nutrition to be absorbed into their meat. So their meat is inherently more healthy, more nutritious.
Yep. Now let's look at more rules that seem redundant at first glance. So Deuteronomy 22:11, it says, "Thou shalt not wear a garment of diverse sorts, diverse sorts, as of woolen and linen together." So wool and linen. So we ain't supposed to wear wool and linen together. We ain't supposed to mix fabrics. People say that is the dumbest rule ever in the Bible. They talk about it all the time, whether you're atheist or not. Like, you got atheists that say, your God says you can't mix fabrics, ho, ho, ho. And then you got people who don't follow the Torah and they say, oh, well, we don't do that anyway. But why would we follow that? It doesn't make any sense. And so in Leviticus 19:19, we see it again, but we see other things as well. It says, "You shall keep my statutes. Thou shalt not let thy cattle gender with a diverse kind. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed, neither shall a garment mingled of linen and woolen come upon thee." So wait, you're saying that it's wrong to mix fabrics together. Okay, we get not mixing species, right? We understand that, right? Like, it's probably wrong for you to mix breed two complete different species. We talked about this in the last couple of weeks with the Nephilim and all of that, right? That's part of the reason why we got the flood in the first place. So that one's not really hard to understand. But then if you coming from a farming or gardening background, they will probably still understand the seed issue. Most of us who don't got green thumbs, we don't understand that, but somebody could explain it and say, hey, I had to message Professor S offline just to confirm, and he explained to me what happens if you mix seeds together, or if you plant a variety of seeds in the same area. You want to go ahead and explain to them like what happens with the seeds?
Well, there was actually a guy, I think I might have mentioned this on the GMO episode that we did, but there was a guy that he always won at the county fair for his corn. His corn always won first place. He had the best corn in the area, and he was interviewed by a local newspaper, and they said, well, how do you do it, right? And he said, it's easy. I just give my seeds to all my neighbors. I give them seeds from my corn. And they said, well, what does that matter? He said, because corn gets pollinated, right? And he said, if my neighbors are growing inferior corn, then my corn is going to become inferior because the bees are going to fly around and pollinate my corn. The wind's going to blow and it's going to pollinate my corn. And he's like, I want my corn to only be pollinated with good corn. Because if it gets pollinated with bad corn, then I'm going to have inferior crops. And so that's how this guy was able to grow the best corn, right? So if you're mixing seeds, you're planting different types of seeds around your farm, then what's going to happen in a small area is the pollen from this plant is going to get onto this plant, and they're going to mix, and the next year's crop is going to be damaged, inferior, or mutated, right? You want to have good, healthy crops. And so you don't want to mix different types of crops, because the pollen from one of them is going to go to the other. And then the next year when you plant, you're going to have seeds, you're going to be growing crops from seeds that were not we'll just say they become damaged or inferior.
Gotcha.
Almost like a thoroughbred, right? Like a
Well,
thoroughbred.
Kind of, but it's actually the opposite with plants than it is with animals. Like with a thoroughbred dog, it's more of, now that all of the traits you don't want are bred out of the dog, then it becomes a thoroughbred, which was intentionally caused by breeding along the way, right? The opposite is true of plants, because what you want is the plant in its most natural state possible, as opposed to now with dogs. If you want to breed these traits out, then you would get the traits that you do want, and then you've got a thoroughbred, right? With plants, it's the other way around, because you want them to be in their most natural state as possible. But yeah,
Purebred.
similar concept though. Yes.
She said she meant purebred, so I get what you're saying, sis.
Yeah.
You know. So
yeah, it's a similar concept. Yes.
okay, so we get the seeds. Right? We get the mixing the animals. We get that. But these fabrics, right? What's up with these fabrics? So in 2003, a Jewish doctor named Heidi Yellen conducted a study on the frequencies of fabric. According to this study, the human body has a signature frequency of 100, and organic cotton is also the same. The study showed that if the number is lower than 100, it actually puts a strain on the body. For example, a diseased person, nearly dead, has a frequency of about 15. And that's where polyester, rayon, and silk register. Non-organic cotton registers at signature frequency of about 70. Okay, but here's the important part. If the fabric has a higher frequency, it gives energy to the body. This is where linen comes in as a super fabric. Its frequency is 5,000. Wool is also 5,000. So putting one of these on, 100% linen or 100% wool, that 5,000 is helping your 100 of your natural body, and it's giving you energy. It gives the body energy, right? But when you mix together with linen, when you mix wool with it, the frequencies cancel each other out, and it falls to 0. So it falls to less than your original state, and even less than what they say a diseased person or damn near dying person has. So you go all the way to 0 because you mix two fabrics together. You see what I'm saying? Even wearing a wool sweater on top of a linen outfit is in a study collapsed the electrical field. This goes back to the vibrational frequencies I mentioned earlier. Your body has a natural state that is supposed to remain constant. It can be increased, right? And when you increase it and you infuse energy into it, you know, it makes it healthy. But it should never go underneath your natural state. And that's why, like, when you eat all these types of foods, all these acidic type of foods, and your body becomes acidic, your natural vibrational frequency lessens. And that's what invites all of the bad stuff, all of the disease, the dis-ease and stuff. So mixing fabrics is important. Knowing that is important, right? But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, even if you don't know it, right? Who knows that, you know, these types of fabrics give you 5,000. But if you're just obedient to the Most High and
Then
just
it's
follow
well
the
with you.
law,
Then it's
then
well with you.
it's well with you. See, these laws, statutes, and commandments, they're not stupid rules just because the Most High is this control freak and he just wants everything to be whatever he wants it to be. He gave it to us for our protection because he loves us, right? So continuing on, just keep in mind as we go through this entire thing, each scenario, keep in mind about questioning the Most High about these various things. And I'm addressing from like the small things over to like the bigger arguments as we go along. So we see that it actually cancels out the benefit of each fabric, bringing your frequency to 0. Already said that. Already did all of that. Okay. Now let's look at a more morbid example, one that atheists have tried weaponizing in their argument against the legitimacy of the Most High and the Bible since forever. Why does God, right, and I put God in caps because this is the argument, allow innocent women and children and animals to be killed? A lot of people have a problem with this, even believers, right? I remember when I was studying and I read for the first time when Israel was instructed to go into these various places and kill and wipe out these various peoples. It bothered me. I had to put down the Bible for a whole 2 weeks. And it took a couple different visits from my spiritual mentor to come to my house, sit me down, and have various studies and explain things to me before I was able to like understand why. You know, Marquita, you know, it was Dave. Dave had to come to my house like 3 or 4 times to get me to be like understand it, because I was livid. I was living. I was confused. I was like, why is he doing this? Why, you know, why? Dave was in my I learned this principle in my kitchen on base when I was living on base. I'm telling you. So we're gonna hit a couple scriptures up. Deuteronomy 20:17. It says, "But thou shalt utterly destroy them, namely the Hittites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, as the Most High thy Elohim have commanded thee." Okay, so these are the types of people he was telling we need to get rid of, right? But in these people, you got women, children, elderly, you know what I'm saying? Let's keep going. Let's go to Joshua. Joshua 6:22. "And they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, and ox and sheep and ass, with the edge of the sword." So this is what they're pertaining to. Why would the Most High instruct this? And why would he even allow this to happen if he's a just God, if he's a loving God, right? A wise and benevolent, you know, Elohim. Because they utterly destroyed everybody. So men, women, says young and old, so children and elderly, and the animals. Everybody got the axe, right? Let's go to Joshua 10:40. "So Joshua smote all the country of the hills, and of the south, and of the vale, and of the springs, and all their kings. He left none remaining, but utterly destroyed all that breathed, as the Most High Elohim of Israel commanded." Everything that breathed. So if you was breathing, you got the axe, right? And that does not sit well with a lot of people. How could he allow this? Why would he do this, right? And 1 Samuel 15:3. "Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass." Now here's the thing. In our westernized perspective and understanding, here's the problem right here. Women and children. Women and children have universally, on the Western perspective, have been categorized as innocent. You don't harm a woman. You don't harm a child. We're supposed to love and protect them, right? But they get in the axe too. And then secondary to them, it's so crazy. Women and children, and then animals will come before men, right? Like us fellas, we just left out. But even the animals, excuse me, I'm coming down a little bug. So why did he instruct this destruction? Why did he allow it? It's a lot more than this, but I just broke it down to a few examples. Excuse me. Israel was chosen by the Most High to be set apart from the other nations. He was who the Most High was focused on. Everything he was doing revolved around Israel. So everything that he allowed to happen.
And it still does, no less.
Yes. Yes. Didn't mean to put past tense in the historical context. I was just, yeah, but definitely, yes. He's still doing everything for Israel. Okay.
Yeah.
There is a bigger issue being addressed as we see later in the Old Testament. The Most High was literally preserving Israel. Now, this one right here, this is, I don't know why they highlighted like that, but okay, that's weird. But the preservation of Israel here is what my old spiritual mentor had to explain to me. He said, you got to understand, out of the whole world, right? Back then it was the whole world. Now I do the whole world. You see that? Yeah, Earth is flat, bro. Anyways, out of the whole world, the Most High was focused on one specific nation, one specific people. So where he told them to go, what he told them to do, the things he allowed to happen around them and to them was all to preserve them. He wasn't worried about nobody else. He was worried about them. So he was preserving them. And I said, you'll see later in the Old Testament, because when you read later in Kings and all of the other king books, Chronicles, Kings, Samuel, the prophet books, everywhere, you see time and time again, Israel was led astray into idolatry, into trying to be like the other nations.
Yeah,
well,
they were being corrupted by the influence.
Exactly, right? Like, let's go to Solomon, for example, right? Now, his downfall wasn't the fact that he just liked to have a bunch of wives and concubines. The problem was he wanted wives and concubines that were heathen. That was his issue, because by marrying them, and when you marry to somebody, you share yourself with them, with that individual, and they share themselves with you. But these people didn't serve the Most High. They didn't keep the Torah. They didn't believe. They had their own gods that they was worshiping. And what did they end up ultimately doing? Leading him astray into idol worship and worshiping those other gods. When you see the times where Israel went into a land and didn't smack everybody, and they tried to intermingle and live amongst them, they got led astray time and time again, right? So he was trying to preserve all of that from happening from jump. He said, go into this whole area, kill everybody, and then you can inherit the land with no problems. The problem is, right, we went in and we killed a lot of them, but there was times where people was being stubborn and didn't kill everybody, and then we seen some of that stuff that he said not to do end up happening anyway, right? So it was for the preservation of Israel. The other nations was dealing with all kinds of idolatry and human sacrifice. A lot of the stuff don't know about it until you do research into some of these other cultures and some of these other types of pagan religions, and see, like, we read about Baal, right? Well, there's only, I think, like 2 or 3 scriptures that kind of infer that there was child sacrifice among the worshipers of Baal. But when you look into Baal, that deity demanded children sacrificing. So if Israel was then taking on the customs of the followers of Baal and worshiping him, they was killing their own kids to worship to them. So you're going to take a creation from the Most High and sacrifice it, kill it, and sacrifice it to another god? We already know our Elohim is a jealous Elohim. So it don't work like that, right? And I said I said this already. They got a history of being led astray. But the biggest and most meaningful of these reasons is that because he loves us. Because he loves us, he gave those specific instructions. My mentor had to tell me like this. He said, if you was only worried about this one people, and they were a small people compared to everybody else in numbers, and they were in an area that was surrounded by everybody else, and you wanted to keep them preserved, would it not be beneficial to ensure that for them to be preserved, you wiped out everything around a clean slate so that they could grow and prosper? And I was like, okay. And he was like, the people that you think are innocent are not innocent. They worshiping other guys. They doing child sacrifices. They, doing all kind of abominable things. And it's normal to them because that's how they live their lives. But Israel, who was set apart and supposed to be holy and supposed to live a certain way, they can't get corrupted by that. Because it's easier to wipe the slate clean than to try to do away with the corruption that's already gotten into it. Like if your food goes bad, you got to just throw it away. You can't say, oh, I'm going to try to cut off, this little bit of mold here and this little bit of mold there, and I'm going to still eat it. Like you got to just wipe it all the way out. So
yeah, and not to mention another thing about that is, yeah, they were idolatrous, they were doing all these things, but another big reason was because all those people listed there, all the Canaanites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, the Perizzites, all of them were from tainted Nephilim offspring as well.
yep.
So they weren't even actually human. So Israel mixing with them would have corrupted their seed, and they wouldn't have been human anymore.
That
was-
that was a big one.
I was just gonna ask that, were some of them giants? That's why it was told to wipe out the women and children and
Yeah,
everything.
because you'll notice that some of them they were told kill all the men, but you can keep the women and children as long as they're virgins, right?
Yes.
But other places he said no, kill them all, kill their livestock, their women, children, everything, right? So when you've got distinctions there, depending on which people they were going in to wipe out, right? There's more of a reason behind it than you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Sis, you had unmuted yourself. Go ahead.
Do you have do you have a quick reference to that claim that you stated about all of them being Nephilim?
That they were Nephilim. Well, the Canaanites, Canaan was where would the reference be? Genesis maybe 11, 12.
Yeah. We literally just went over it like the last 4 weeks.
Off the top of my head, no, but
I mean, I saw all of that, but I didn't see like those names specifically.
So what you'll see is the progenitors. And the progenitors, their name was used to name like a whole group of people. So Amalek and the Amalekites were of Amalek. They were the descendants of Amalek.
Amorius and the Amorites. Yeah.
So it'll say like this specific individual was, a giant or a Nephilim, or he was a son or a descendant of a giant or Nephilim. And then there might be a group of people named after them. So that tainted seed, that biological seed that's tainted due to the Nephilim DNA, will still continue to pass throughout their generations within their people. That's why when you see like during the time of King David, before King David, King Saul, when David was young and he fought Goliath and his brothers, they were all giants, and it went on record saying that they were giants. And they were all descendants of other giants. And that's why the Philistines was one of the biggest problems for Israel throughout those years.
Now the Canaanites. Now, when it says that the spies went in Numbers, can't remember the chapter off the top of my head. It says that they went in, and it says the land devours itself, and they were giants, and we felt like we were grasshoppers in their sight, and we were, you know, so they were pretty big, right? Now there are specific commands in Deuteronomy, which I'm not sure if you put in here, but where it says that if you go in and conquer this nation, then you can take any woman that has not laid with a man, you can take her, you can take them and save them alive, but you have to kill all the men. And then in other places, he says you have to kill all the people, but you can take the animals as spoils of war, right? And then in other places, he says kill everything, all the animals, everything, because there was all kinds of genetic manipulation going on, all kinds of tampering going on, and Nephilim hybrids and all these things. So he gave them specific instructions wherever they went to, what to do, because you don't want hybrid cattle being mixed in with your good cattle, right? You don't also, like, of course he would not want Nephilim mixing with Israel, you know what I'm saying? So
Facts. There's always a deeper meaning to what might appear to be just senseless killing. Okay, hold on. I did. Okay, so let's go to the biblical explanation from the Most High Himself, right? Deuteronomy 7:1-10 says, "When the Most High thy Elohim shall bring thee into the land, whither thou goest to possess it, and have cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou," right? This greater and mightier, you can interpret it however you would like to interpret it, but all of which is true. They were bigger because a lot of them were giants, right? There was a lot more of them than it was of Israel, so greater in number, greater in size. Regardless of how you look at it, that both is true. Mightier, if it's a giant, the giant's going to be stronger than the standard man, right? And then if they have more numbers, their military might is mightier than that of Israel. So regardless of how you look at these two, they both are true. They both apply. And when the Most High thy Elohim shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. For they will turn away thy son from following me, right? There's that idolatry piece. Okay, and they may serve other Elohims, other gods. So will the anger of the Most High be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly? But also, marriage means to procreate, and that mixing of the seeds. They're not trying to mix the seeds either, so that also plays a role. But thus shall ye deal with them. Ye shall destroy their altars, break down their images, cut down their groves, and burn their graven images with fire. For thou art a holy people unto the Most High thy Elohim, and the Most High thy Elohim hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself. This is why I said, for the preservation of Israel, because Israel was above all people that are upon the face of the earth. They were the ones that the Most High chose. He says, the Most High did not set his love upon you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any people, for you were the fewest of all the people. But because the Most High loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, right? Because this is Deuteronomy. So you in Deuteronomy, he's already talked to Jacob, he's already talked to Abraham, he's already talked to Noah, right? And when you read the other books, he's already talked to the various patriarchs before, like Seth. Seth plays a big role. Okay. So he gave an oath, a promise, and made a covenant with a lot of these individuals. Hath the Most High brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen from the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Most High thy Elohim, he is Elohim, the faithful Elohim, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. So he's going to remember you for 1,000 generations, those who love him and keep covenant with him by keeping his commandments. It goes back to our offside conversation. Keeping the commandments is very important because that's a demonstration of the love that you have for him, right? And repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. He will not be slack to him that hateth him. He will repay him to his face. So those people who are not doing this, but also the people who are blatantly doing things against what it is that he set up to do, with those sacrifices and idol worship and all kind of things. So let's briefly address a few more examples, and then we'll wrap it up with the biggest question of all. Why was Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed? Some people might say, you know, everybody in the city couldn't have been that bad to the point where you wanted to destroy everyone and everything, right? You know, there was probably some innocence. There's probably, you know, it's a city, so you're going to have women, you're going to have children, you're going to have elderly, right? Obviously, you're going to have men, and you're going to have animals. Again, the same thing plays into account. But the Bible is clear, right? Genesis 18, 20 and 21, 23 to 24, 26 and 32. The reason why I did this was so I wouldn't have to get all of the chapter and then we'd be here all day. And the Most High said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, he says, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. So I'm going to check them out, basically. I'm going to vet them. I'm going to vet them, and I'm going to find out who is actually, you know, doing a lot of sinful things. And their judgment is going to be upon them. And Abraham drew near and said, wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked, right? How could the Most High kill, you know, innocent people, righteous people? And the Most High and Abraham, they go back and forth for a good little while. I don't have it all here because they started, I believe they started at 50. And they go from 50 to 40 to 30 to 20 down to 10. And he's like, what if there's 50 people that's righteous? He's a peradventure. There be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are within, or therein? And the Most High said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sake. So the Most High said, if I can find just 50 people in this city, I'll spare everybody just on account of those 50 righteous people.
And now Sodom and Gomorrah was not a small city either. I mean, its population was probably somewhere around 1 million people.
So out of that many people, he said, if he finds 50 righteous people, I don't even want to calculate that percentage. It's probably like less than a percent.
Oh, it's pretty low.
You know what I'm saying? Less than a percent of people, he would have spared everybody. And like I said, they go through this dance. So Abraham just keeps asking. He goes, well, what about 40? The Most High's like, I'll do it for 40. What about 30? I'll do it for 30. And then he get all the way down to the part where he says, and he said, oh, let not the Most High be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And then the Most High said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. So he gets all the way down and say, for 10 people, I will save this entire city. And we know based on the scripture what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. So it says, this is 19, 13 and 24. For we will destroy this place because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of the Most High, and the Most High hath sent us to destroy it. So if these are the two angels speaking now. If they're saying that they were sent to destroy it by the Most High, obviously he vetted the city and couldn't find 10 people. He couldn't find 10 people. Then the Most High rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Most High out of heaven. So, you know, why did this happen? They were living in enormous amounts of sin. They rebelled against the Most High, and the Most High could not find any righteous individuals there. Remember, he said he'll save it for 10. He'll save it for 10. So whether we put, women and children on a pedestal, or cute little animals, bunnies and puppies on a pedestal, there was not 10 people in this entire city that could justify the Most High saving them.
Now you can actually correlate that with Nineveh, and when Jonah went to Nineveh.
Yep.
When Jonah went to Nineveh, and he told them, like, he was like, look, y'all are all getting destroyed. You've incurred the wrath of the Most High. You're all done for. You're hosed, and the king of Nineveh heard it, and he said, oh my goodness, we've upset the Most High. He said
they repented.
And they repented. He said, no one, he said, everyone, even the animals, the livestock, everything has to put on sackcloth, and we ain't eaten for, what was it, 3 days or something? He said, we're all fasting for 3 days. You don't even give any grain to your cattle, And then what did the Most High do? He spared them, right? So you can correlate this, because Sodom was so wicked, man. And we won't get into how wicked they were, but it was far more than just being homosexuals, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't simply that they were doing all that. It was a lot more than that. Everyone in the city was wicked. I mean, and if they found anyone that wasn't wicked, they was killing them. They were like, oh, you're not being wicked like the rest of us, well, you're dead, but but not Nineveh, on the other hand, as wicked as they were, the king said, well, I'm declaring a fast. Everyone in this kingdom, even the cattle and the livestock, ain't eating nothing, right? And they fasted, repented, and they were spared. So, and
Nice.
there's also a very interesting little scripture here that I'll go ahead and read as far as this goes too. In Ezekiel 14, I'll read 12 through 14. It says, the word of the Most High came again to me, saying, Son of man, when the land sinneth against me by trespassing grievously, then I stretch out mine hand upon it, and will break the staff and the bread thereof, and will send famine upon it, and I will cut off man and beast from it. Though these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they should deliver but their own souls by their righteousness, saith the Most High Elohim. So he was saying that even if Daniel, Job, and Noah were in the city, they're the only ones that would have been spared. Because and another thing, just one other thing I wanted to add on to the whole Sodom and Gomorrah thing is the angel said they were coming to destroy it, and they told Lot, we're getting you out. And they said get out, because we can't destroy it while you're here, because the Most High doesn't destroy innocent people. He doesn't destroy innocent people. So he with Lot in the midst, the angel said, we can't destroy it until you're out. Go on, get out.
And they waited till they got a good distance away before they even.
Yep. So, whenever you think, oh, look, he's having Israel kill all these innocent people. No. There's more to it. Yeah.
It's always more to it. He's not just making us eat certain foods and wear certain clothes and go on murderous killing sprees for no reason.
No, there's always a reason to it. We may not understand the reason. He might not tell us what the reason is, but there is a reason. It's like if I tell my children, don't go beyond this fence, I may not let them know that on the other side of the fence there's a dog that likes to bite kids. You know what I'm saying? But I have a reason for telling them don't climb over this fence and go over there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you know what's crazy or interesting about that example you just gave?
Hmm.
Your kids are your children, and we're his children.
Yep.
Same
Yep.
principle. Same principle. Everybody on
Because
this panel who are parents should understand.
because he is a loving father and he doesn't want anything to go wrong with us. He wants everything to go right with us. Right. But whether or not it does is up to us, depending on if we keep his commandments.
Yeah. So why did the Most High tell Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, his son? And this is where we see it. Genesis 22, verses 1 and 2. And it came to pass after these things that the Most High did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here am I, or here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. So why, right? To test Abraham, right? If you read the book of Jasher, the book of Jasher goes into this account a lot more in detail than the Bible does. And you'll see that in the book of Jasher, it was a very similar story to the book of Job, how the Most High had a meeting in heaven and he brought the host of angels before him, and Satan came. Remember the story of Job? And Satan came and told him, like, oh, he only worships you because you blessed him with all of this stuff, right? It was very similar to that, but it was in regards to Abraham instead of Job. And so one of the reasons was, Satan said, hey, Abraham's only loyal and obedient to you because you've blessed his life, you've blessed his finances, you've blessed him with a son. If you took away his son, then he would have no reason to worship you, because his son is his most prized and cherished possession, right? And so Most High was like, all right, I got you, we're gonna do it, right? So part of it was to test Abraham. Second of it was to shame Satan, because he knew that Abraham was faithful and righteous, and that if he told Abraham to kill his son, that Abraham would be obedient and do just that. And we saw that Abraham was 100% willing to do it. The other thing is to keep his promise to Abraham. And I know that sounds weird. Like, if you wanted to keep your promise to give him a son and to bring forth many nations as numerous as the sand in the sea and the stars in the sky, why would you tell him to kill his son, right? It seems counterproductive. But it was to keep his promise because he knew that Abraham would do it, right? So when he told him to, and Abraham was getting ready to, that's why he stopped it and provided an animal sacrifice instead, because he was keeping his promise. Another thing is, Isaac, his son, a lot of people picture this story where Isaac was like a little boy who was ignorant and didn't know what his dad was doing. That's not actually the case. When you look at the chronology of the scriptures, Isaac was probably well in his late 20s, early 30s by this time. He was a grown man that went up the mountain, right? And he knew what the offering was, and he was willingly sacrificing himself for the Most High, right? He knew. So that also plays a role. But then number 4 is to foreshadow the Messiah coming. And that's when Professor S mentioned it earlier, where he said in the scriptures, he says, for the Most High will provide himself a lamb. And that's what happened with the Messiah and his sacrifice. If you look at the Messiah sacrifice, and then you look at the events that happened in Genesis chapter 22, the events of Genesis 22, is actually called the Akedah. We actually did a Shabbat talk on Akedah, so you should go back and watch that if you haven't watched it already. But it's very, very symbolic, and it's very closely related. A lot of the symbolism, a lot of what happens that takes place is very similar. You know,
Because in a covenant, when the Most High made a covenant with Abraham, both parties of the covenant have to be willing to fulfill the same obligations to the covenant, right? And had Abraham not been willing to fulfill his part in sacrificing his son, then the Most High wouldn't have been able to as well,
you know,
because of the broken covenant.
and that's the great thing about the Most High. He doesn't create rules that he doesn't follow himself. He always operates within the confines of what he instructs us to do. He always does, always. And we'll see the biggest example of that later on and at the end of this. But we almost there, we getting there. So why did the Most High kill the individual trying to keep the Ark of the Covenant from falling? That man ain't do nothing. He was trying to help. I done heard arguments for this one too, man. You know, part of me feels sorry for him because I know that he was just trying to help. And I think like in a split-second reaction with the Ark tipping over, he just, you know, he made a knee-jerk just reaction to go like, you know, like even if it's, you know, something just sitting on the table here and I see it out the corner of my eye and it's getting ready to fall over, just out of sheer instinct reaction, I reach out and I try to grab it, right? So I kind of feel bad for the brother in that regard, but then I don't feel bad for him because the instruction was clear. Only the Levites can touch the Ark of the Covenant, period. So after I read the scriptures, I'll tell you what he should have did. So 1 Chronicles 15:2, then David said, none ought to carry the Ark of the Most High, but the Levites. For them have the Most High chosen to carry the Ark of the Most High and to minister unto him forever. Right. So here's the event of the guy who let it who touched it. 2 Samuel 6 verses 6 and 7. And when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah, this is the guy right here, put forth his hand to the Ark of the Most High and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. So to give you the backstory, they were traveling and they were transporting the Ark of the Covenant from one city to another. And they were worshiping and excited, and they was, you know, doing a big celebration. And I guess one of the oxen, he got startled for whatever reason. Maybe he hit a bump or something, but whatever reason, the oxen, he got startled, he shook it, and the Ark started to tip over. So this guy Uzzah tries to catch the Ark. And the anger of the Most High was kindled against Uzzah. And the Most High smote him there for his error. That's why it's underlined. And there he died by the Ark of the Most High. Right? So what he should have did was be obedient and just let that mother go fall. Let it fall. Because it's not like a simple instruction from a parent, right? If your parents say, I don't want you touching this VCR. I know why I say VCR. I'm showing my age. I say VCR. But like, I don't want you touching the VCR. And then the VCR is getting ready to fall right in front of your face. And you don't, and you don't catch it, they gonna snap. Why you ain't catch it? Well, you told me not to touch it, right? Then it would have probably been a situation where they'd have been like, yeah, I did, but man, you could have caught it. And so you probably still would have got in trouble, but not that much. But when the Most High tells you don't touch something, you don't touch it. It don't matter what the circumstances is. He should have let that thing just fall. But you know, Uzzah, in our general understanding, didn't do anything wrong. So why did he have to die? Why couldn't the Most High make him go blind or send a wind to smack him around or something, or make the oxen right here, make him like kick him in the leg and break his leg or something instead of killing him? But you got to understand what the Ark of the Covenant is, what it represented. and what
It's
it
not something to play
contains
with.
is not nothing to play with, right? So the Most High, he had to keep his word. He's not a respecter of persons, and he declared that the Levites could only touch it. So if you ignore all of that, blatant disregard for all of that, remember, it goes back to all of them other reasons, right? The Torah not here just for us to just be like, I need to follow the Torah blindly. I'm a mindless zombie. I'm a slave. No, it's there for our benefit. So we need to have obedience in this regard, just like we have to have obedience in what we eat and what we wear. If he would have been obedient, he would have lived, and he would have not had no problems or no issues. Now for the biggest question, why did the Messiah sacrifice himself? And I put here, disclaimer, there are many answers to this question. If I put scripture for every single one, we would have an entire book. So I'll just mention a few reasons and briefly go over the explanations, but feel free to search out the scriptures for yourselves, okay? All right. Number one, we all understand, and we, to forgive us for our sins, right? That's the main thing, right? The biggest sacrifice, to forgive us for our sins. Okay, we get that. To become the eternal intermediary between us and the Most High. He is now our high priest. Before, in Israel, you had the high priest, you had Israel. The high priest would intercede for all of Israel to the Most High, right? But the high priest wasn't righteous enough, wasn't holy enough, couldn't do what the Messiah can do. Messiah is perfect, 100% perfect. So if he's the high priest and the perfect sacrifice, there's no need for the previous things according to the Levitical priesthood to be valid, because the sacrifices that was made for sin was temporary, and it just rolled over to the next year. But when you have somebody who's blameless sacrifice himself and is established as the high priest, the true high priest, you're knocking out two birds with one stone. So now forever and ever and ever, we have that middleman between us and the Father. Scripture says you can't get to the Father but through the Son, right? So he's that eternal intermediary between us and the Father. 3, to fulfill prophecy. There's prophecy. We just covered this offline when we talked about how the names of the various patriarchs from Adam down to Noah, the meanings of their names prophesied the coming of the Messiah. So the Messiah had to do what he did in order to fulfill the prophecy. That's just one of the prophecies. He fulfilled so many prophecies. Like I said, we'll be here all day with a book, right? And also to be a living example of how to keep the Torah. This one is very significant because a lot of us don't know how to truly accurately keep the Torah. So we have that perfect example. We have somebody who came down in fleshly form, lived and breathed like you and I, but still followed the Torah to a T and did it in such a way that he didn't taint anything. So if he can do it, that lets us know that we can do it. Right? And then to show us the true definition of love and sacrifice. Right? I know scriptures say love your enemies as in all of that stuff, but ask me, am I going to just be willingly willing to just to die for my enemy? Right? If we in a situation where somebody got a gun to my head and my mortal enemy's head, I'm gonna be like, oh no. For the sake of righteousness, you're gonna shoot me and let my mortal enemy live. Nah, bro, I ain't there yet. Most High still working on me. I ain't there yet. So you think about everybody who broke the Torah, everybody who sinned, everybody who lied, everybody who fornicated, everybody who committed adultery, everybody who did idol worship or child sacrifice. They were his enemies. And he sacrificed himself for everybody, right? So that's a true definition of love and sacrifice. And then to allow for Israel to be reconciled with Messiah, our husband. Israel is the bride. The Messiah is the bridegroom, right? According to the Torah, when a woman, when the wife is divorced from her husband, she can only be reconciled to her husband if she does not lay with another man. If she does lay with another man, she can never go back to her husband as long as he lives. That's the law. That's the Torah, right? So if Israel was married to the Messiah throughout the time of Israel, and we went a whoring, sleeping around, right, with all of these other false idols and deities, you know, whether it be Baal or whether it be Molech or whatever these other pagan names were, right? That means we cheated on our husband. So according to Torah, he has the right to divorce us, which he did. And since we continue to go a whoring, we slept with another man, right? Philosophically, we could never go back to our original husband, which is the Messiah, as long as he lives. So he killed himself. Well, not killed himself, but allowed himself to be willingly sacrificed. He died, right? So now, since he died, now we can be reconciled back to him. A lot of people missed that one. Professor Ash put that one up there. I want to say like 6 months ago. You brought it up.
Yeah, it was when we were going through Romans, I believe.
Romans 11, right?
It's Romans 7, I believe.
5.
Right?
It's 5:07. We were just reading that today.
So yes,
Because it's talking about the law of a woman, and if she's while her husband lives, she's not free to remarry, but once he has died, then she's free to remarry.
Yeah. So he did all of that, right? Obviously, it's a lot more reasons for the Messiah sacrifice. This is just a few. But somebody who may be an atheist or somebody who just lacks understanding and is remember I told you, keep in your mind, questioning the Father for whatever the reason is. Not from a sense of I want to learn more, but I'm questioning it because I'm questioning you. I'm questioning your character. I'm questioning your motives. I'm second guessing, you know, whatever it is that you have said or done, right? If you're questioning the Messiah sacrifice, this is some of the reasons why. And then it makes sense. Oh, okay, I can get it. So in conclusion, the fact is that we must come to terms that the Most High has a reason for everything he says or does. Even if we lack the understanding of his motives, we should never question him from a place of distrust. As we have seen, he is just and honorable with his judgments and puts instructions in place for our protection and benefit. From the food we eat and grow to the clothes we wear, he is always keeping his promise to us. Even when his actions seem to be harsh, there is always a reason behind them. We must search the scriptures, seek understanding, and align our spirits with the truth to be made aware of that which we may lack. And then I put in closing, I know some of you may be wondering why I did not mention Job in this lesson. I mentioned him in my commentary, but I didn't put him physically in the lesson. I did this on purpose to close with the words the Most High gave to Job after everything took place. Job was wealthy and lost everything, including his family, was put through hell, and even was surrounded by a foolish wife and judgmental friends. But through it all, Job's only mistake was questioning the Most High from a place of ignorance. But he never lost faith or betrayed him. And as his reward, he was restored and given more than he previously had. So keep these final two scriptures in mind the next time, as the creation, you think to question the Creator. And the two scriptures is Job 38:4. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. This was when, you know, Job had already finished. He concluded all of the back and forth with his three friends, right? Because their basic argument against Job was, you was rich, you had all these kids, you had all this land, you had all these servants, you had all this money. You lost all of that, right? And then your physical body is in all of this disarray. He had boils all over his body. He was in all types of pain. I'm sure he smelled. I'm sure it was just bad. The whole situation was bad. Their understanding was nothing this bad could happen to a man if he was innocent. So Job must have had to do something wrong against the Most High for this amount of punishment to fall onto Job, right? And Job basically was telling them, I've been righteous, I've been obedient, I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I do not know why all of this is happening. So stop coming at me like I'm the one that did something wrong. Don't talk to me, talk to him. But at the same time, Job was grieving and he lost everything he had. He lost all his children. He lost all his livestock, all his money, a lot of his servants, everything. So he was in grief. He was in pain and agony. And then you got to add salt to the wound. 3 friends who's supposed to come and support you ain't doing nothing but just basically accusing you. And then on top of that, your own wife is like, just curse God and die. Curse the Most High and die. And he had to tell her she was foolish because she was just out here tripping, right? So all of that's going on. And then he gets to the point where he's just like, why is all this happening to me, right? He didn't know, but he questioned the Most High, and the Most High gave him an answer. And this was his answer. It was a lot more than this, but this was like a small piece. But basically, where were you when I created the earth, when I built the foundations that the earth sits on? Let me know if you understand. Let me know if you know, because last time I checked, you wasn't with me when I made all of this. So you are not, as the creation, in position to question the Creator about anything I do. Whether you die, whether you live, whether you know what I'm saying, prosper, whether you go into disarray, it's up to me, and whatever I choose and decide to do is righteous because I'm the creator, not you. So he basically checked Job, and Job was like, got you, cool, I got it, right? And then Job ended up saying, the Most High gives and he takes it away. He takes away as well, right? And whatever he decides to do is ultimately up to him. And we as his servants, his creation, shouldn't really be dealing with that. But even through all of that, Job still remained faithful, and he never lost faith, and that's why he was restored and given that reward, right? But Isaiah 55, verses 8 and 9, Most High says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. So what you can think and imagine are not what I think and imagine. And the things about you, your personalities, your traits, your nature, is not me, it's not mine, saith the Most High. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So all of that to say, when you find yourself questioning the Most High, regardless of what it is, maybe you might feel that something he did was unjust, whether you might feel like something he did was harsh, something that he did or said for us to do doesn't make sense. Maybe it seems pointless or redundant or a burden or whatever the case may be. Whenever you find yourself questioning him in that way, always swallow that humble pill. Remember, he is the Most High, and everything he does, there's a reason behind it. You might not understand it, and the fact is, you don't have to. That's the problem. You don't have to. You don't have to get it. You don't got to understand every little bitty thing, right? When your kids ask, but why? It's cool to ask why in certain situations. And as a parent, you are willing to give them that explanation, but you don't got to explain yourselves to a child. And in the same way, you don't got to explain yourself to them. He don't got to explain himself to you. Who is you? What is really going to change other than you saying, yes, Lord?
And see, here's the thing. When you actually ask a question in humility and you genuinely want to know the answer, not for selfish reasons or just to test him and be like, oh, well, why this, right? But if you genuinely want to know the answer, lots of times he will give it to you.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
if you're truly asking in humility and you want to know because you seek a deeper understanding of who he is, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But even if he doesn't, it should suffice. It's just like No, I don't remember. Never mind.
If at the end of it all, you're gonna be like, yes, Lord, right? At the end, once you know it, once he answers your question and you realize the deeper meaning, oh, it's the frequencies. That's why I can't mix these fabrics. Oh, it's because of the health and the spirit matters and all of these things. That's why I'm supposed to eat these clothes. Or it's because you was preserving and protecting me and my ancestors. That's why you told us to kill all of these individuals, right? Once you get that answer that you're seeking for, you get to the yes, Lord. But here's the thing about obedience, and that's why I always say this: the greatest demonstration of love that you can show the Most High is to be obedient. Because if you're just obedient from Jump Street and you start with the yes, Lord, you end up at the same place. They're both yes, Lord. They're both yes, Lord. Here's the difference. When you start off with a yes, Lord, he can reveal to you after that whatever it is, right? And you can come to him in humility and ask those questions, like Professor S just said. And then after that, your yes, Lord is more fulfilled, right? In a sense. But if you start off questioning him, you're not doing so from a place of humility. And now he has to humble you in whatever way he chooses to. You don't want to be humble like Job was humble, but
Right.
But you still get to the yes, Lord. So at the end of the day, why not just be obedient from Jump Street from the beginning and do what he said to do? Figure out the why later. The why isn't important. What he says is important. He's not somebody who you can't trust. I get it if it was somebody who lied to you in the past and now you're wondering if what he told you. I just saw your message in the chat, sis. He just said murderous spree. Yeah. I mean, but so if he I just lost all train of thought. But yeah, like it ain't somebody you can't trust. So like if somebody betrayed your trust in the past, yeah, of course you're looking over your shoulder a little bit, you questioning their motives, like, is this person really being genuine? That's understandable. But somebody who is tried and true and proven and time again to one, be just, be righteous, be fair, be loving, be merciful, and he's the creator.
And to have your best interests at heart anyways,
Always. Always. Why are we coming from a perspective? We're letting our own personal, insecurities or our own personal experiences with these wicked men and women here on earth kind of cloud our understanding and the omnipotence of the Most High. And we're kind of putting him in that category of one of our friends or family who hurt us. He should never be questioned, because whatever he said to do or not to do is gonna benefit you in the long run.
I think it was Jim Staley who said, it might have been someone else. I forget where I heard it exactly, but someone had said, if a pastor doing something makes you turn away from God, then it wasn't actually God that you were following to begin with. You were only following the pastor, and that's really true. It's very easy to categorize and put things in boxes and say, oh well, because this happened in the past from some other person, then this person must be doing the same thing. And maybe they are, but we can do that. We have a tendency to do that too with the Most High and say, oh well, because this pastor was wicked and he was doing all this stuff just for personal gain so he could get a private jet and stuff, then I ain't gonna trust the Most High. Well, how do we, in our limited understanding, we have a tendency to link the two, but they're really not. They're not linked. He's so far above our ways that there's no comparison, right? So we need not view him in light of what people, even people claiming to represent him, have done. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Absolutely. That's why I say, you know, for the people who still like church, who still go to church, who still feel like, you know, they want to have that fellowship and be a part of a physical body and go someplace to worship. I got you. Cool. Not knocking it. I personally disagree with it, with the systematic structure of the church and how it's not in alignment with the scripture, because it's the Great Commission tells us to go out, right, and to preach the gospel to all nations, not have a solidified one location and then have everybody come to the solidified one location every Sunday to hear a pastor preach the word, right? And then the pastor's sermon isn't even from the scriptures. He probably based the whole sermon on 1 or 2 or 3 few scriptures, and then he reads those scriptures, and then the rest of the hour to 2 hour sermon is him just giving his own opinion, right? That's not what the church that the scripture mentions, right? With the apostles going to the streets and putting their lives on the line to preach, right? It's not the same, right? It's not the same. But if that's what works for you, all I say is that don't let it, like Professor S just said, don't let your connection to the church or to any of these pastors, preachers, teachers, elders, captains be your direct link to the Most High. Your relationship with the Most High should be your own, right? You should study on your own. You should read on your own. You should pray on your own. And then let going to church be an outlet of whatever he's pouring into you on a daily basis for you to go and pour into other people. The knowledge that he's given you, you can go to church, still hear a sermon, but now that you have a separate relationship with the Most High, that sermon isn't gonna, you ever heard like a pastor say some really dumb things? And even though it's stupid and it's not biblical whatsoever, the congregation's one, lack of understanding of what the scriptures actually say, or they're just blind and blatant loyalty to the pastor will still have them shouting in agreement, saying, amen. Yes, pastor. He could say, I went got me some bacon the other day, and I know the scripture say we ain't supposed to eat it in Leviticus 11, but you know how they do all of that stuff, right? And in the crowd will go crazy, and you just like, yo, I read that last night. He ain't supposed to be doing this.
They'd be like,
how are y'all even in agreement with this, right? It's the same thing.
yeah.
So if you have a separate relationship and your pastor sleeps with one of the mothers in the church, right, and the big scandal happens, and the pastor got to step down, and people leaving the body of the church and severing their ties with the Most High because he was their connection. He was who they idolized and they looked to for the answers. And when they found out that he was a man who makes mistakes and is sinful just like they are, now they have nowhere to go. But see, you could be like, oh dang, that's messed up. All right, back to my studies, back to my scripture. It's not.
Well, yeah, because the mediator between us and the Most High is not the pastor.
Correct.
It's the Messiah. So
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So with that said, family, that's it for tonight. Unless anybody got any questions or thoughts or something popped
They
up
did go
during
to
the
the
show.
synagogue,
You said
as
they did
was
go
customary on the Sabbath.
as was customary on the Sabbath. Yes.
Now the
That's
synagogue.
Acts.
That's
Which chapter in
interesting.
Acts you in?
I
Well,
think
it is in a few of them. It's like Mark, Luke,
yeah, it says it in Luke
sprinkled
9.
around there.
So now here's the thing. Interesting note there about the synagogue was the synagogue was like a town center, right? It wasn't only for Sabbath, it was like a town center. People would be doing commerce 6 days a week out in the synagogue. If you wanted to go get something, you'd go to the synagogue to buy it, But on the Sabbath day, all the commerce was shut down, and people who wanted to study scripture and reason together and all that would come to the synagogue. And each city or town had a synagogue, which was basically like the town center, but it wasn't that they went to synagogue as their connection to the Most High, right? They went for edification and learning. They went for edification and learning, not for not just well, actually, in a lot of situations, it probably was more like a social club, like churches become today, where it's like a social club where you go to catch up on all the gossip and and find out, all this stuff, but
Was that Cindy or Tess who said Pastor Pork Chop was wrong about the pork?
That was me. Yes.
Mom.
Oh, Pastor Pork Chop. Yeah.
yeah, you hear these sermons where you're like, oh, I love some pulled pork sandwiches, and yeah, it's but yeah, here's the thing. When the scandal does take place, like Solomon Prophet was saying, when the pastor has a moment of weakness, or maybe he was always doing this behind the scenes and no one knew, and he finally got exposed, right? Whatever the situation was, you see so many people just leaving and saying, I'm done with God, this whole thing, it's all a crock, right? And all that really indicates is that they weren't actually following the Most High from the beginning. It was their pastor they were following, and it's really sad. It's really sad. The pastor should lead people to the Most High, right? He shouldn't be the one that they're following.
Yeah. This is a very simple analogy, but I'm gonna still use it just because it's just basic, right? If you are trying to learn Spanish and you go to a Spanish teacher and you study underneath them, right, for years, and you finally get Spanish, right, and then you find out that the teacher did something, wrong or inappropriate, whatever the case may be, and their license was taken away, they were fired, and they can no longer teach Spanish. Does that delegitimize the language that you learned just because that individual made mistakes and got exposed? You say, oh, you know what? That's it. I'm never speaking Spanish again. Forget Spanish. Spanish, you are wrong. I'm done with you. Mr. Lopez, he done messed up. He done did some things. Or Mrs. Lopez, she done messed up and did some things. I don't want nothing to do with Spanish no more. No more Espanol, okay? Because y'all just did whatever y'all wanted to do. It don't make no sense.
I ain't never gonna speak that again, ever.
I ain't never gonna speak it again. No, it don't make sense.
He's a hypocrite.
Right. He's a hypocrite. You see what I'm saying? No, it don't work like that. What you should do is figure out, not even figure out. Ask the question, okay, pastor had whatever kind of scandal going on. Well, was he just that type of individual where he was just doing it and he finally got caught? Or was he a human? Did he make a mistake? Man, I should pray for that brother or that sister. Hopefully it's not, hopefully it's not the latter. Hopefully it's the former, but, should pray for them. And hopefully they can find the light and get back on the train, because the Most High can still use them to do good things. Mm-hmm. There was a pastor I read about, I didn't read about it. I watched the video when we were talking about understanding the true Sabbath. And this pastor went from the understanding of Sunday to Saturday in terms of the Sabbath, right? So after his research, and he came to the understanding that it was Saturday for him, right? He was so convicted that he decided to stop preaching on Sunday. Well, the board of the church that he was a part of, they brought him in and they said, hey, man, what's going on? And he said, listen, I've been doing research. I've been studying. The most I put it on my heart, I found that my understanding is based that the Sabbath is Saturday, not Sunday. So I'm going to be holding services on Saturday. Y'all can continue doing your thing on Sunday if you want, but as for me and mine, we're going to be on here for Saturday. And they told him, you got two choices. You can continue preaching on Sunday and teaching your congregation that Sunday is the Sabbath, or you can step down as pastor and we'll find a replacement for you. Because, them churches, the board is who has really the power and the authority. It ain't really the pastor. You got the smaller churches is where the pastor is the head of the church, But a lot of these big mega churches, you got a whole board. It's a business. It's not a small church. So he ended up telling them, no, I can't willingly lie now that I know the truth. This is what his truth was. So he stepped down. I think he either started his own church or he started his own little small group, and they worshiped on Saturdays and kept the Sabbath that way. You know, at the detriment of losing his entire congregation, he refused to go against his morals, his standards, and his beliefs, and he held up integrity. And a lot of pastors aren't willing to do that because a lot of them know. A lot of them know what the truth about various aspects of what the Bible teaches, and they are unwilling to change because one, either they're going to lose their congregations, they're going to lose memberships, they're going to lose those tithes and those offerings, or it's going to expose them for being a false teacher, a false prophet, for preaching, past the pork chop for 40 years of him being behind the pulpit telling people to eat pork, and then he just come out like, hey family, I'm sorry, we ain't supposed to be eating no pork. Oh, what you mean? I've been eating pork 40 years because you told me I could eat it. They're like, I'm going to just not say that. Let y'all keep eating the pork, and I'm going to keep eating the pork. Or maybe they doing the correct thing behind closed doors and still letting everybody else live astray, regardless of what it is. And those are leaders that you ain't supposed to have. You don't want them.
Yeah, no, you need it. You need, if you're studying under a pastor, you need a pastor that's going to be able to say, look, I was wrong about the pork. We shouldn't be eating it. You know what I'm saying? And you need to get rid of that shellfish and slimy sea creatures, and don't be eating any camel neither,
Right? Eating that pissy old meat. That eating piss meat. Grade A PP. They had a grade to make the grades on the meat. Like you go to get you some ground beef, it'll say like 93% lean or like 80 something. I try to at least get 93% when I do get it, but no, they just say this one got 17% PP in it. No, but that's it though, family. If nobody else got anything tonight, that's it. You guys can hit it. Because I forgot to do it last week. Had to edit it in. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you like this content. And all right, Shabbat Shalom, family.
Shabbat Shalom.
Bible tucked right
Shalom,
next to that
love y'all.
bitch. I be
Shabbat
counting blessings, so
shalom,
you
love
know I keep that faith. When it comes down to a higher, yeah, I step up to the plate. I don't know why people sell their souls, it's really such a shame. They be burning for eternity for temporary fame. It's only one way to ascend. Read the scripts, yeah, that'll get you higher. It's only one way to the Father, like it or not. It's only through your shire.
I only